I'm Jordan.
And I'm Rosanna.
And on this podcast, we explore how to take life off autopilot
and relentlessly pursue a life worth living together. Hello, and welcome to Season 7, Episode 6 of the Relentless Pursuit podcast, High School Reunion.
Yeah, we had a chance last October to go to our 20th high school 20th high school reunion. No, our 20-year high school reunion. The first one we went to.
There you go.
So it was really nice to be able to go to that. But what we wanted to talk about on the show today was just some, takeaways, some lessons that we learned about reunions themselves, and also about how that puts perspective to our life.
Yeah. Someone had, started organizing in that 6 months to a year prior. And, because of Facebook groups, people could weigh in on, location and date and when and all of that. And so we kind of watched that unfold for a few months. And Jordan doesn't really use Facebook at all. But he found himself, hopping on to check, because people were then posting questions about cutest girls in the class of 2001, yeah, or who was your high school crush, yeah, or, all of this stuff. And it, starts flooding back some of those memories of who we
people
were.
Posted pictures or videos from back in the day.
And so it was, kind of a fun time to reminisce online. And so they ended up picking the date of October 22nd. And, the whole time this notion of it's going to be our 20th year high school reunion, Jordan was like, yeah, we should definitely go. Jordan is always always all in, always ready to go. And I was like, maybe we'll go, maybe we won't, because I was a little nervous, a little scared. And so what was actually a little interesting about it was I was working a wedding that day.
It was in October, so that's your busy season.
So
that kind of
I worked a 12-hour day that day. And then once I left the wedding, at about 11 o'clock, I rolled into our 20th high school reunion, quasi alone, I've worked all day. And so I think in my mind, I always pictured you show up to your high school reunion and, your hair is freshly, blow dried from the salon, and you have a specific outfit picked out, and maybe someone does your right. You want to make this impression, or you want to walk in and have people be like, wow, 20 years later, she looks great. Not ooh, hi. Life's been a little unkind to you, but.
Well, you didn't walk in quasi alone. I went an hour early because you were working. I'm I don't want to wait for you.
You walked out to the parking lot and we walked in together, sure. But, it wasn't in the circumstances kind of you think you're going to kind of do it in, or the way that you do it in. And, I'd worked a 12-hour day. So, I probably wasn't the freshest or, but we went. And, what actually ended up happening is we had a really great time.
Yeah. So we're grateful to the organizers. It's no easy feat to get everyone to agree on a date. But we're glad that we went. And, I guess just being us, I'm sure other people maybe have similar thoughts too, that just kind of process the way we think about that event and what it means. What does it mean? And so that's kind of what we wanted to work through. And it's interesting because this has been on our list of podcast episodes since October of last year. It's kind of taken almost that amount of time to really reflect on that experience and some of the other things that we've taken away from that.
You're right. What do we want to say about it? And so now I think we have something to say about it.
All right. Can we briefly, this isn't in our notes, but I wanted to do this. Can we briefly just describe our high school selves to our audience?
Ooh, we could do that.
All right. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, but
am I describing myself, or am I describing you?
It sounds I'd like for you to describe yourself, but it sounds like you're excited to describe me too. So you can do both of us.
This is one of those things I wish you would have prepped me for.
No.
So I could
intentionally didn't put it on the
jot
notes,
it down,
so I could put you on the spot.
Okay, so I would say, so high school Rosanna, internally, probably shy, a little unsure. Always wishing I was a little bit different than I was, right? A little bit more popular, a little bit cooler, a little bit prettier. I probably think the list goes on and on. Probably probably a typical insecure high school girl. So I had, friends in a lot of different circles, friends that I grew up with, went to elementary and junior high with, I had that group of kids. I did some other things in high school as well. And so I think overall people would say they knew who I was. I wasn't the most popular, but I think life was good as a high schooler. I think I had my people who liked me, appreciated me, understood me. So yeah, I mean, senior year we were homecoming king and queen. And so,
And voted cutest couple.
and voted cutest couple. Yeah. When you get your senior, what do they call those senior superlatives? Best this or most likely to, we were voted cutest couple. And so, walking into the reunion and people seeing us together, like, yeah, we heard you got married. We heard you had 4 kids. It's like, it was interesting people's responses, to us walking in together, still together.
Yeah. All right. So can you briefly describe me? And I'll chime in and correct you.
Okay. You as a high schooler, again, in marching band, so there were plenty of people that knew you. You had a lot of friends that were, you were actually, I would say I was smart. You were smarter. So while I may have had some advanced or honors classes, you had a ton of them. So you had a lot of people, I don't know, the very smart, elite, knowledgeable people. You knew them. You were in drama a little bit, and so you had those people. You were also chess team person.
I don't mean to brag, but I was
right.
on
So
the chess team as well.
you had plenty of nerds in your corner. You had a lot of people you grew up with. You were kind of just this unassuming nice guy who then, got this girlfriend and then did very sweet things for her. And you got a lot of accolades from the ladies for how charming and sweet you were.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think it's hard to describe us separately in high school because, meeting early sophomore year like
we
that.
were kind of always together.
Yeah. So being together helped to define us as well. So I could say who I was, but then I could also, you could see by senior year, the way that we influenced one another as well.
Yeah.
But I would tell people even today, I was socially awkward and didn't care. I'd still talk to anybody and just be as nice as I could be. And I was a cool nerd, I mean, yeah, I'm in marching band and chess team, but, I think that
Geek chic.
yeah, more geek than chic, probably.
More geek than chic. When I look back at pictures of myself, I see very thick eyebrows. When I look back at pictures of you, I see a really skinny, nerdy guy.
Yeah. So we were made for each other.
MFEO.
All right.
So yeah, that was the high school us.
So when I was thinking about high school reunion, there's a movie that came into my mind, and that was Sweet Home Alabama with Reese Witherspoon and Josh Lucas and McDreamy and
Josh Lucas. Oh, is that his name?
yeah.
Oh, you looked it up? Because I don't know what that guy's name is.
Oh, I haven't seen the film itself in a while, but that features a
Which
girl.
is not about a high school reunion.
No, it is about coming home though.
Okay.
And so this ties in. There's a couple different elements to that movie that I think you'll all hear me touch on throughout our conversation. But it kind of features Reese Witherspoon, who grew up in small town Alabama, she was probably 20 years old when she left, really made a big name for herself in the fashion industry in New York. And then she has circumstances before she gets married to the New York mayor's son, who's also, what's his name? McDreamy?
Yes.
Patrick Dempsey.
There you go.
All right. I had to dig deep for that one. She's forced to come home, and it's her first time home in 10 years. And so for her, it's kind of this reunion of all of these people of her past, of her childhood, who helped make her who she was. And there's, it's really sweet because she finds her accent again, and she reconnects with old friends. And of course, her Alabama love interest's dog, still remembers her and likes her. And so it has a lot of romantic comedy, feel good moments. But there's also some other elements too that I'll bring up that makes the movie a bit, I'm going to use the word sinister as well, where if you really think about it, I think it raises some interesting questions about reconnecting with the people of your past.
And well, what's funny is the movie that came to mind for me, I don't know why it always comes back to movies for us or quotes in books, but is the cult classic Romy and Michelle's High School Reunion, which is about 2 girls who are friends in high school who go, to their 10-year high school reunion. But really they get word of the high school reunion, and basically they realize that it's been 10 years, they have nothing to show for it, they're embarrassed about who they are, and then comes this big elaborate plan to come up with lies about like what they've done since high school, and to like
Don't they pretend that they invented Post-it notes? Is
yes,
that
invented Post-its, and one also invented some kind of like sticky glue that's like on everything, to like show that they're successful, and then they go to like great lengths to like look a certain way and to try and like put their best foot forward, and then why that doesn't work out for them. And so it was interesting that it's like, okay, it's been 10 years and now I want everyone to think that I am successful and beautiful and this and that. And kind of like that obsession with I can't go unless I have something to show for it.
Yeah. And so what we wanted to do was to, in true Relentless Pursuit podcast fashion, we made a list of 5 reasons you should attend your high school reunion. And I guess there's like bigger lessons like in each of those reasons. But we came up with 6. So we'll kind of shuttle through these and see, just kind of reflect on, what it means to kind of show up and suddenly see people that are, a part of your past, people, many of whom you haven't seen or talked to in, for us, 20 years, and what that can do for you.
Okay.
So I guess especially if you have a high school reunion coming up, you should take heart in these and go. But even if you don't, I think that there's some interesting connections and takeaways that we all can have.
Okay. So here's the first one. So our 6 reasons you should attend your high school reunion. And the first is reunions aren't scary. And I think that that's something that we all kind of feel. I came to the reunion, like I said, a little bit late. And there was actually, the way our high school was is for most people, it's like there's a huge town and then there's one high school. Well, where we came from, it's like a bunch of smaller towns that like are all right on top of each other. And then so all of these smaller towns feed into this one bigger high school. And so this gentleman, Jason, that I grew up with in Itasca was there. And he was just kind of standing there and, like I said hello to him and we were just like catching up and, I'm like, gosh, you're like so quiet, or, we were kind of just joking a little bit. And he's like, well, I'm like actually like really nervous and really scared about being here. And I was like, you are? And he's like, yeah, and he was like, aren't you? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm like petrified to be here. I said, like, I don't like, what do I say? Who do I talk to? Like, I just feel like I'm not like sure where to go. And I just felt calm after that, knowing that like everybody's there. And while everybody wants to be there, like there's also this like apprehension about being there. Like, why am I coming? Or like, why don't I want to come? Why are we nervous? What are we afraid of? And I think, it's like, just like that fear of like how we're going to be received, or are people judging me, or what do I have to show for it? And so there's this kind of like underlying scary feeling about maybe attending or going.
Yeah. And so like, I know like number 1 is reunions aren't scary, but they are. They don't have to be, but like, we could acknowledge a lot of people feel the same way. And yeah, you almost have to feel like you give an accounting for like what you've been doing for the last 20 years or so. And like how many dollars worth am I, have I accumulated over that time? How healthy am I? What have I done with my family? What have I done with my job? Like, that's a big chunk of time, and you feel like you should have something to show for, something that you can be proud of, or even character-wise. Like, did I turn into a good person, or am I going to be received as someone who's awkward, or someone who's, a jerk, or like, you have some of those reservations about what you've done with that time. And I think that, I felt that hesitation as well. So I think that's pretty normal. So we have to get over that because everybody feels the same way, and maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, and I think something to note too is when there was our 10-year high school reunion, we did not attend. Do you remember like why we didn't?
No. That was 10 years ago. So I don't know. I think at that point we were still...
I think I was a little too afraid to attend. At that point, like we had already been married, like 5 years?
Yeah, we'd been married 5 years. We already had one kid.
I was either pregnant with or just had our second kid. Pregnant with.
Probably. But everyone would have been like, roughly 28 years old. So I feel like, I think part of our conversation was, as you look at I don't know if it was like the Facebook feed or whatever, but there was like kind of half the group was still like kind of young and free, let's go party hard. And then the other half, like us, were like two old people. Like, well, you should probably be in bed by 10 o'clock.
Well, it could
But by
be.
the time you're in your third, like the 20th anniversary for me was like kind of the golden one, because now you're in your 30s, like everyone's still young enough, you're not so far removed from high school, but everyone has, kind of become a full adult in a sense. Not that you're not in your late 20s either, but
I think you're right. I think at that point, like the camp was split. Like we got married kind of early at like 23. And so there were people who had like already gotten married and were like kind of settled, maybe having kids and like, no. And for as vain as I am not, I am also very vain. Like no one wants to show up like postpartum with your baby and like, feeling
here's pictures of my kid.
well, that or like, you have bags under your eyes because you're not sleeping. You have the baby weight on. Like that's not how anybody wants to show up to like the first time you've seen people in 10 years. And so I think you're right. Anybody who wasn't married or maybe was just married and was ready to throw down, like those people had a really great time. But I remember being like, that's not my scene. I can't show up to that. Like, I'm not ready for that.
Yeah. So looking back, like I think we should have gone now that we're older and wiser.
Now that we're older and wiser.
Yeah. All right. So number one was reunions aren't scary. Number two, I think, feeds into that. What's number two?
It's not a competition, right? Do we feel like we need to have something to show for ourselves, right? Or are we worried about what people will think about what we have or haven't accomplished?
But people do, like, I mean, it's just human nature to kind of, look at someone and be like, well, this is what they're doing now, or this is what's going on. Like, don't you think that there's a touch of that? And not to say that there's a lot of judgment, but like, I mean, are we doing those things that we're telling ourselves other people aren't or shouldn't be doing?
Well, what I'm saying is you don't have to go there because you're the most successful person or because like you have it all together. Like part of the reason of the reunion is to reconnect, and you don't have to have it all together to be there, right? I mean, there were plenty of people who, right, maybe got married at some point and then 20 years later are either divorced or, right, like that there are different situations where it's like you can't show up because your first marriage didn't work out, or you can't show up because you're 38 years old and you're not married yet. Like we don't always have to have it all together. We don't have to make the most money or drive the nicest car or have
like, the most
four
interesting
beautiful
story.
children.
Yeah,
right.
like I showed up and I just wanted to talk to people. I even talked to people that I didn't even know who they were. I'm like, oh, we went to high school together, right? And it's just interesting to hear their stories. Like, what have you been doing? And it's kind of an awkward conversation starter to be like, all right, so bring me up to speed. 20 years, what you've been doing. But I think that's really at the root of it, is like, at least our motivation was just to go and hear some stories and to share our story as well.
Right. And it wasn't about like making yourself feel better about where you are compared to somebody else. But it really was just about like reconnecting, having that shared sense of history. And so, I walked in and like, there were plenty of people there, like people that were, like cooler than I was, people that I remembered, a few people that I didn't. But like the minute I walked in and saw someone and like his hand shot up in the air, he's like, oh my gosh, Rosanna. And I was like, looked at him and I was like, I have not thought about you in 20 years, but oh my gosh, like we had a ton of classes together. We talked to each other at lunch, and it's, it was like more about just like that feeling, like it was just like you're in a safe place where people like know you and recognize you. And it really doesn't matter if you got married at 23 or 33 or, you're 40 and you're not married. It's just like we're all kind of connected because of our past.
Yeah. So it's a good thing just to remind ourselves of too. And now you're getting into some of the other the other numbers as well. That happened to me too. Actually, I walked in and the very first person who I saw like looked at me and same thing, like, Jordan. And like, me, like I knew who this person was, but like
you can't remember anyone's name.
The wheel was turning a little more slowly until he asked. He's like, "Do you know who I am?" And like by that point, I had figured it out. I was like, "Yes, I know who you are."
All right, so on to the next.
On to the next.
Number 3, real life is better than social media. I have a small group of friends from high school, and actually they're from elementary school. I've known them, since we were kids. And we stay pretty well connected. I remember kind of like the first kind of reconnection after college was when you and I were getting married. And I was thinking about who I wanted to invite to my wedding. We had a small group of friends that we invited that like we were like currently friends with. But I felt like I wanted to invite these 4 girls. We had known each other for a really long time. And so what's great over the years is as each of one of us has gotten married, we've all attended the other's weddings. And so we still get together, once or twice a year. We text back and forth occasionally. When other big moments and milestones happen, we show up for each other. Because there's this definite sense of like, they were so much a part of each other's lives for so long. It's like, even though we're not in the day to day, like there's that connection there. And so we were at something together a few months before the reunion. And one of the girls was like, what do you guys think? Like, should we all go to the reunion? Really optimistically. And like, one right away was like, I'm not going. That's not my thing. I don't want to go. Everybody that I still want to talk to is right in this room. I'm friends with all of these people on social media.
There are a lot of like reunion pessimists where it's like, I already talked to everybody who I want to talk to. Why do I want to go and see people who...
And which I was surprised because,
Which is fair. That makes sense to me too.
But like all of these girls were well liked in high school, right? Like what's funny is we all had like us as a connection group, but then everybody else had like other different groups. And so like everybody was familiar with everyone else. Again, like well liked, well respected. And so it surprised me like, oh, why wouldn't you show up? Because people would want to see you because you're still just as like kind and fun and smart as you want to be. But she was like very anti-reunion. And then someone else in their group, both her and her husband actually went to high school together, didn't date in high school, but like connected later. She's like, he doesn't really want to go. So I don't think we'll go. Same thing. Like I can see what everyone's doing on social media. And I was like, well, I'm not sure if we're going to go. Jordan really wants to go. So that only left one of the other girls in the group. And so leading up to the reunion, she's like, well, if you're going to go, I kind of want to go. So if you're going, I want to go too. And so thinking back about that now, what I thought was interesting, it kind of connected to number one is like, although reunions aren't scary, we're afraid to go. But when you have someone to go with, so what's lucky for the two of us is like we have each other. We went to high school together, so it's like we can go together and it's a safe place. That's Somebody true. Else brings their spouse and it's like, hey,
there
here's
were a
my
couple
husband.
Spouses there. It's like, who's this guy? Eh? So there's a good buddy system. There's a buddy system.
But she knew I was going and I knew she was going. And it's like, okay, if in the whole room there's nobody else, at least we can like cling to each other and like feel safe. Mm-hmm. And I saw that. But now looking back, one of the things that I realized is like that real life connection, talking to some of these people, some was like great. It was like a warm welcome. It was a hug. Some it was a little awkward, but it's so much better than just seeing that highlight reel or even just the sad things that people post that have happened to them over time. Like, I think what we do forget is that we're human. Like, we're wired for social interaction and connection and not social media. Like, we're a generation that grew up like on landlines. Like we used to call each other on the phone, not text each other and be like, you want to talk? Like we literally just pick up the phone and say, hey, can you come over? Hey, do you want to hang out? Or hey, Mrs. Smith, like it's Susie, like, and like talk to people. We played and interacted before there was dial-up internet. Like we are a generation that I think we forget this. Like we used to spend time and look at each other and hang out. And now it's like, now we'll just suffice with whatever someone posts on Facebook.
Yeah. And you realize like when you do reconnect with someone in person, you realize how superficial a lot of the Facebook stuff. And I don't mean to say that like in such a negative sense, but like no matter what someone is posting online, it's really just a tiny sliver of who they are and of what they're doing. So to interact with someone live in person is so much more meaningful.
Oh, sure. I mean, we've all done the deep dive on Facebook. Like you think of someone or someone likes something, you're like, oh my gosh, I dated that guy in high school. And then you click on the profile and you start scrolling and you're trying to like read their life story based on like what they post. Cause you're like curious. You're like, oh, I wonder whatever happened to them.
They're all very curated. A lot of like vacation and holiday pictures, a lot of pictures of kids more than like the actual person themselves in many cases. So
well, I think it depends on the person and all of that. But it's like it did feel good to be in a room of people and to like look at people and to listen to people and to hear people and to really just listen. Because, I think it's different than looking at a page and scrolling.
Yeah, there's no real interaction with that necessarily.
Yeah. And I think, like, again, that need for like connection and social interaction, like, I felt like when we left that night, like there was like, not that something changed, but kind of like, just like there's like a little warm glow to your heart. Like, it's like, okay, like these people, like we've all gone all of these different ways. Some of us still live like in the area or kind of like right outside the area where we grew up. And it like, to me, it just felt good to know that like these people are still there. They're still people. They're, like, I don't know, that made the world feel a little bit smaller.
Yeah. All right, and that a lot of these kind of like I think interconnect. So we'll go right into number 4, which we listed, which is it's good to reminisce and indulge in nostalgia, and we did a lot of that. I remember I saw someone who I went to kind of like you were talking about. I went to elementary school and junior high with this person even before. Like in high school, then we kind of stopped interacting. But it's interesting to be able to like kind of go even further back in your past. And I told like I was a square in junior high, like super. I was like geek chic in high school, but I was like
Geek.
I was geek in junior high. And so this girl was, I'd say like just like a little bit more cooler, but also like super nice. So she was always nice to me. And I remember probably one of the few times I got in trouble in junior high was because of her. And every time the teacher turned her back, we'd make little like paper balls and we were like throwing these at each other. And I was like, oh, look at I'm a bad kid now, you know. So I remember like telling this girl that story and just like reconnecting like over that. And, you know, there was similar conversations with other people as well, where we can look back and talk about something that happened 20 to 30 years ago. And what I realized is that there's so few people in your life that you can actually do that with. And so, you know, like now that we're almost 40, like how many people can we have a conversation with where they were there? Like they did that with us 20 to 30 years ago. So other people that I would put in that camp would be cousins. Because we could talk about like family and like obviously like parents and aunts and uncles were there and they knew us, but they knew us differently. Like I'm thinking of people who are your contemporaries. So I think
Jordan 1.0, Jordan 2.0.
Yeah. But you also like grow up with your cousins as well. And, you know, depending on your family and how often you see them. But like, you know, for me, it's like all of the, when you get together at your grandparents' house, all the silly games that you invent with your cousins or the times that you get hurt or hurt each other or like the funny memories that you have and you co-experienced those. So then 20 years later, you can get together with your cousins and look back and you share those because they were there and they understand you and they were present and they experienced something that made you who you were at that time. And it's difficult to find people who understand you in that way. And so even though for me, like not having talked to these people in over 20 years, like to still find a little bit, I guess the way I would put it is like you find a piece of yourself in these other people.
And I've run into, from time to time, people that like I grew up with too, whether it was in high school or even before, like in random places where it's like, oh my gosh, that's so-and-so. And all they do is like, they just want to like lean in and be like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in so long. But there's like that little piece in your heart where it's like, they were such a big part of your life for, you know, anywhere from like 4 to 10 years where it's like, gosh, that's, you know, you understand yourself better kind of when you look back, like those shared experiences, like you had those same teachers or, you know, like you were in those same summer camps, you played sports with people. All of that comes flooding back. You and I have been together for, gosh, okay, so married 16, but together 20 what?
25.
25, okay? There are times when you bring up a story of something that I don't even remember, like, you know, that it happened so long ago or so much has happened since then. And you're like, do you remember when? And I was like, oh my God, like I almost forgot that happens, but it like floods your memory with those feelings, that time. Like, you know, when someone says like, oh, something from 20 years ago, you're like, oh, like, you know, it's just, it's so long ago, yet it still helps define like who you are and where you were and what you've become.
Yeah.
And so what I found is like, sometimes we forget who we were. And sometimes who we think we are clouds like who we've become. Mm-hmm. And so when you're sitting there talking with someone who knew you 20 years ago, and then they're standing in front of you, and then they like see or hear like what you're doing or who you are now, sometimes there's like this clearer picture of who you really are versus who you think you are. Mm-hmm. You know, when someone is staring right at you and like, and saying what they see or like what they've heard about you and like the excitement in their voice, it's like it's almost like a mirror where someone's like actually reflecting who you actually are versus like who you think you're supposed to be.
Yeah, and it's harder to hide too because it's like I was there. Like I went to school with you for 10 years and we saw each other every day. And what's interesting, and I think you and I have that advantage since we've known each other since we were 15, but I was also just thinking that like so much happened before then too that I can't share with you. Like I was talking to another kid who I went to school with since kindergarten, and just like some of the stories and mutual experiences, like I can name teachers or name like locations in the school or events that would mean nothing to you that then I can still like find in this other person. And there weren't enough people from my junior high who were there. I think there were only 3 people from my junior high who showed up.
And I had a
Or my,
gaggle,
my
which I was
elementary
like
school. Yeah.
surprised. I was like, man, we're showing up strong here today.
Yeah, we were going to take like a picture. And it's like, well, okay, let's all 3 of
all
us
3 of
can
us, yeah.
get into the shot. But this is where Sweet Home Alabama like came up for me, because that's the plot of the movie, where this woman who is like 10 years removed from her hometown like goes back, and she begins finding pieces of herself in these other people. Here's her friend, here's her parents, here's her love interest. And from the moment I saw the movie, and I was kind of reminiscing on this, I was like, for me, skeptical and fun to watch movies with as I am. I walked
the
away
worst.
from that movie like, she really she left her hometown and made a big name for herself in New York. And then she goes, and I don't know how long, she's in her hometown for like 2 weeks, and all of a sudden she's like, I'm not getting married to that New Yorker. I'm getting married to my Alabama high school sweetheart, and I'm gonna live in this small town. And that just didn't work for me. I'm like, are you kidding me? So it made me thinking a little bit about kind of that idea of like our past. And obviously we're speaking very favorably of our school experience and our childhood experience, but in that movie, like this girl like got out of town because it was not that she had like bigger ambitions for herself. She was in a relationship that wasn't working, and she wanted to get out of it. And like, so she had a reason to leave her town and to move on to something else. So it's still good to go home. That was the first. Everyone gives her a hard time, like, this is the first time you've been back, and since you left, in like 10 years or whatever. But interestingly, like, there's a little plot point where she bought her parents plane tickets to come visit her in New York, and they never came to visit her either. So in that movie, you get a sense that people from her hometown have, in a sense, like, they've stayed there, and there's a degree, I wouldn't say of stagnation, but like of just like comfort with the same kind of life that they've always had. And she is obviously like far more ambitious and already like doing things that they are completely unfamiliar with, out of context for them. So to what extent, this is leading to my question, so to what extent should we take advantage of the nostalgia and enjoy the piece of ourselves we find in others of our past? But to what extent should that define us or even limit us for what our future can hold?
I don't know. When you phrase it like that, I'm like, well, we grew up in this area and we're still here.
Yeah, I mean,
And our kids will, although it's a different town than we both grew up in, it's a town in between the 2 towns we grew up in, and our kids will go to the same high school that we went to. Like,
yeah,
now
we
I'm
drive
like,
by it. That's where mom and dad met.
now I'm like,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think it all just depends on what you do with it. Like, she needed to leave. And then in this movie, of course, she needed to leave. She made a name for herself. She changed her name, right? Because she was embarrassed by what her name was. She created something, but then finds even after all of that, there's still a piece missing, right? Or that it's not completely right. Or with fame and fortune comes what? Like, it's not everything it's cracked up to be. So, I mean, there's a lot that can be said of that. But I think it's that, part of it is that you can't deny who you are. Can you have ambitions and go do something else? Could you move away? Sure. But we have to remember who we are and where we came from. And so discarding the people of the past or our past isn't necessarily always the answer.
Yeah. And I just think that's an interesting question as well, because yeah, like it's very good to like find those people and those connections. But, and again, like, depending on our past and what we've made of or desire to make of ourselves in the future, like, that shouldn't be like there shouldn't be a ceiling that's put on you because of who you are or where you come from. And I think of Great Gatsby, because that was like the ceiling, right? Gatsby wanted to become like a rich, wealthy person, but because he was new money, like all of the old money people like rejected him because he couldn't get access to their world.
Yeah. One I don't even know what to say that. I'm just kind of moving on in that same category about reminiscing and nostalgia. One of the guys that I was talking to, he was like, I'm not surprised that you guys are still together. I'm not surprised that you got married. I'm not surprised that you have 4 beautiful kids. I heard you have a podcast. Someone was telling me that you have your own business. Not like it was just like interesting, like what they were repeating back to me. And I kind of laughed it off at first. I said, well, I didn't know that like we would get married. And he's like, come on, you guys, like everybody could see it in high school. Like
I knew. You didn't know? I knew.
I thought you were going to go to, because as seniors, we decided that we weren't going to the same college. So I figured this isn't, I cried the day that you left for college. I cried for like 2 months after you left for college. I just figured like, yeah, what's good here is good here. But once you go somewhere else, you're going to find someone else. And so, I just kind of thought it was cute and it was a little heartwarming. Like I didn't really know how things were going to shake out. We were 18. But like for some other, guy who knew us when we were kids to be like, everybody knew like, that there was something special. Like I thought that was sweet, so that's what I have to say about nostalgia.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that, brings up some interesting thoughts. All right. That's number 4. Number 5.
You can get a few do-overs. Now I don't, maybe I'm like missing something, but I talked to another friend who we didn't go to high school with. But when we talk about like our past and now like raising our daughters, she's always said, I was a mean girl in high school. She said, like I thought I was just, I was it. And so like I only dated certain kind of guys and I was mean to certain kind of girls. And she's like, when I look back at my high school experience, I have a lot of regret over that. And so like people who meet me now maybe wouldn't peg me for being like that in high school, but she's like, I never want my daughters to be like that. I never want them to be the mean girl. And so we always talk about including other people and being respectful of others. She's like, because I was awful. And I think that might keep some people from attending their high school reunion, like that who they were isn't who they are now.
Yeah.
Right. It's easy to like be a nerd in high school and then show up and like, like have been a late bloomer and like
me. I'm 3% less nerdy.
But you know what I mean? Like, you were a big time nerd in high school, or maybe you just were, you didn't have a lot of friends.
You were shy or overweight or
right,
like whatever, black mark you want to put on.
And then you walk in and you're looking pretty good and you're successful and you're married and whatever. So you have a lot to show. So it's easier to show up, right? It's easy to show up like that. But when maybe you weren't looked upon favorably for whatever the reason, maybe you're embarrassed to show back up as who you are now. And so I think we just have to remember that, regardless of who you were then, it doesn't have to put a black mark on who you are now or keep you from like reconnecting with people.
Yeah. Okay, I was thinking where you're going with that is you get a few do-overs where like you can't edit your life, but you have kids and you see them like starting to go down a path that you went down that you didn't like, then you can like your do-over is essentially with your kid. If you could make edits to your life, it's going to be those improvements you try to make in your kids' lives.
Well, and I think that's true. Like right now we've got a son who's 12, he's like that preteen stage and, kind of worries about what other people think of him or who he should be, or even when like certain kids in junior high are starting to like exclude or like, make fun of the most not athletic kid. And just these reminders from high school that I remind our son frequently is like, you know what, you're not forever going to be defined by how far you can throw a football. You're not forever going to be like defined by what kind of grades you get. That, you need to find friends who love and accept you for who you are and aren't like ashamed of you because you like a certain thing or because you're not talented at a certain thing. And so like, that high school version of me was always like worried about like, I'm not the most popular or like those are the cool kids and I'm not. And so kind of just trying to like help reprogram the way he thinks about himself and his friends and where he wants to go and what he wants to do.
I'm not one of the plastics.
We just watched Mean Girls.
That's so fetch.
The other night.
Yeah, he's got a little like geek chic thing going on himself too, but he does something like very nerdy. I'm like, oh, yeah, don't do that. I mean, I did that, but don't. All right, number 6.
All right. I think the whole experience of going to the high school reunion really led us to this idea of that you gain a lot of perspective. We listened to a lot of people kind of just share like where they are now, what they're doing, about their families, about, hard times that they've gone through, whether it was like divorce or sick parents or children who are like, are actually sick and have leukemia or something like that. And just like the lessons they've learned. And it was just, just interesting from like the kinds of people like that these stories were coming from, like talking to like a guy that was like captain of both, like the football and the baseball team, and was, like one of the guys that the girl swooned over, and, just talking about, he was talking about how he left here like on a high, like, right. Like my
Like
name
I've got it
is,
made. Yeah.
this is my name. Everybody knows who I am because like I've achieved like this status here. And he said he went to like a Big Ten school where there were like, how many thousands of people. And he's like, I left here a big fish in a small pond. And he's like, and when I got there, I was a small fish in a big pond. My name meant nothing. The fact that I got these kinds of grades, that this was my girlfriend, and that I was like a 3-sport athlete with like being a captain or like whatever
Right.
in all 3, he's like, didn't mean anything. And
Right. You go to college and like everybody's like that. It's like, okay. Big
he's
deal.
like, it was such a humbling experience. And he's like, it really just changed like who I thought I was and where I thought I was going. And, like for this kind of conversation at like 11:30 at night with a guy who had clearly had several rounds of drinks before I got there, but like, he wanted to tell me like what he learned, and like kind of, just like explain himself. And it, it was just like interesting, and it was like endearing. And it was like, when we came home and we were talking through all of this stuff, it's like, that's interesting that was his experience,
Yeah. Well, everyone, you kind of come up almost like with a little elevator pitch about yourself, because it's like, okay, how do I sum up 20 years worth of experience? So here's where I left off, and here's a few like key events and takeaways along the way up to today.
Well, and what was funny too is, so, this guy was there, his childhood best friend that they went to high school with was there, and his high school girlfriend was there. And so I said like, oh, do you like keep in touch with her? Like, the 3 of you together. I said, I walk in and I see the 3 of you together at the bar. And I said, it was just like
back in the
it was
day.
just like back then. And he's like, what's funny is, he's like, him and I have kept in contact. He said, me and her, we left for college together. It didn't last very long. And he's like, this is the first time I've talked to her in like 19 years. And I was like,
Yeah.
like mind blown, where it was like, you go through something together as kids, you grow up together, and then like there's just like this line, things change, and you lose touch with people, or you break up, and it's not pretty, and right, but you get to this place where you can finally circle back and reconnect. You can finally come home and face each other, right? Like she's married, she has kids. He's married, he has kids. But to finally like sit down together and to be comfortable enough in a space to like to let your guard down and just remember what was good and forget what came after is an interesting place.
Yeah. So, I guess overall, like we're talking specifically about high school reunion, but I think, like as we've said, like this pertains to like friends from your childhood, and I would say like cousins fit that, maybe old neighbors, like really anyone who you spent like a degree of time with, during your youth, that perhaps you haven't been reconnected with in a while. Like those people do play a very specific role in helping just remind us of who we are and of where we come from. And you heard us kind of cover some other lessons along the way. So overall, if you have a high school reunion coming up, we recommend you go. We had a great time, but everyone has their reasons why perhaps they won't attend. But kind of keep some of those memories, even if it's just flipping through a yearbook or looking at some older photos or talking to someone who can like reconnect you with a portion of yourself from back in the day. That does play an important role, both for helping remind you of who you are and also maybe how like where you've gone since those days or what you've done since those days as well.
Yeah. I was thinking just about more perspective I've gained and more like little nuggets when we came home. It was just, it is such an interesting experience, and it's something that can only happen when you put yourself in a room with people who knew you when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, we do have that unique experience because we did it together. And so, and maybe we got more from it than like, just going by yourself without your spouse or not being able
Although
to.
you and I didn't really hang out when we were there.
No, we did
when
not.
you got there, but different people wanted to talk to each of us. So
you just gotta find
nice
you gotta find a friend. You gotta go with a friend.
Show
find
up with
a buddy.
Yeah. But then let it play out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, this conversation, actually, there was, I think, more to it that was good for us to kind of work through. I thought it might have been a little bit shorter, but we're glad to be able to deliver another quality conversation to you fellow listeners. So any other thoughts or takeaways, Sam?
No, I think, just when you think back about your high school experience, some people are late bloomers. Some people peak early. Nice guys are always nice guys. And things change. And so, you don't have to be afraid to show up as you are. You don't have to be embarrassed about who you were. And if you are, you get a chance to do it over.
Yeah. All right. So some good thoughts. So I know all of us are different ages. Some of you still have a long way to go until your 20th anniversary. Some of you flew by the
20-year high school reunion.
20-year high school reunion. Some of you flew by that years ago as well. But it is up, as always, and let us know what some of your thoughts and takeaways are. A great spot to do that is leaving a 5-star rating and a review that comments on this episode or on the show in general on iTunes. And you can always go to therelentlesspursuitpodcast.com, sign up for our newsletter where we have other goodies for you too.
Have a great day, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to today's show. We hope you will use this conversation as a starting point for your own. We hope you are encouraged to think and act more intentionally.
If you want to learn more, you can visit our website, therelentlesspursuitpodcast.com, where you can find notes on today's show, plus additional blog posts, and you can subscribe to our free members list.
Please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends.
Facebook and Instagram are 2 great places to connect with us for daily doses of our quotable quotes, behind the scenes, and real-time photos, videos, and challenges.
Until next time, let us know how you are taking life off autopilot
And relentlessly pursuing what matters.